So when I left the Jets and started my career, it was weird. I couldn't watch a hockey game. When I watched a hockey game, I was analyzing every player, knew every player's number. I could pick what player was what in the whole NHL because you watch every game. Like, it's so crazy. And so I actually did have a bit of a withdrawal. And it's a little bit ego-y. Like, you had this sort of, hey, I'm being part of a team and then not anymore. And so that was a little rough to go through and move away and all that.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 160, which is kind of a cool number. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before I get into it today, if you like this one, which I'm guessing you will, please subscribe or review it. I'm trying to get some more exposure on the show. Today's guest, thanks to Leah for making this introduction. Okay. I'm sure we'll talk about her. Well, we'll explain how we're connected to her, but that's how this happens. So please name and who you are.
Hi, Scott Saxberg. I am an entrepreneur, mentor, and an author.
Amazing.
I guess is the...
Which is like, it's kind of tough to summarize yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I've been around for a long time. I've done all these things.
Yeah. Well, my first thought is always to go to a title.
Right.
Right.
Which
CEO
is interesting.
Of,
yeah.
But I'm learning.
And that's why every time sitting down with artists is interesting because they're like, well, how do I say who I am when I do all these different things?
Yeah.
And the job title's interesting because a lot of people associate themselves, like their identity is tied to that.
Yeah, and I had 18 years as a CEO, public CEO, and so that's kind of the main thing that you think about. And I've recently now as a published author, and you kind of, trying to speak to that more and that side of, because I spent a lot of years writing and finally getting it over the finish line has been great.
Yeah, it's cool. So like we were just talking about off camera, I know nothing about you, which is, know, I know what you did, but that's it. And that's why this will be a cool conversation. So I'd love for you to take this thing back as far as you want to go, how you grew up, where you grew up, parents, siblings, jobs, and we'll just kind of like talk our way to where you are today. And usually it ends up in this like really cool journey story. So take it back as far as you want to go.
So I grew up in Winnipeg, born in Brandon, Manitoba. My dad was a sports anchor, news anchor in Brandon, Manitoba. I don't think, and you probably know this from other guests or whatever, you don't make a lot of money in as being a news director. And so he went back to school, got his education, or teaching degree, and then moved to Winnipeg. And I was like 4 years old, moved to Winnipeg. And so I have vague memories of Brandon. And grew up in Winnipeg, went to John Taylor Collegiate High School. I think a typical sort of 70s, 80s life of my dad was a teacher, mom was a nurse. I have two older sisters, an older brother. So the youngest of four, was left everywhere, those kind of, there's probably therapy sessions that I have, totally. Of being the fourth child, being the last one at home too, probably more therapy, sitting around the dinner table, talking about my siblings, talking about things, which later in life actually I can come back to, but point to, helped me later in life as a CEO, definitely.
Yep.
Those kind of things coming from that background. Went to University of Manitoba as an engineer. It was kind of fluky that I became an engineer. I'll never forget walking down the hall at John Taylor, my best friend David Shum. I was on my way to the resource room or whatever to look at the university guide and try to figure out what I wanted to apply for. And so I asked him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to engineering. My brother's an engineer. It's a great program." And so I literally went into the room, opened up the book, and I still remember just going through and, it's all the different physics and different things. And so I applied for engineering at the University of Manitoba, got accepted, and we actually carpooled together, me and my friend, for couple of years. He wound up failing out. Later wound up in Calgary. Our kids were playing soccer together.
Amazing.
Like it's a crazy, story. We were still really good friends.
Sorry, when you said it's like a simple, like, 70s, 80s upbringing.
Yeah.
And we kind of chuckled at it.
Yeah.
What did it look like back then for you, like growing up as a youngster? Was it school all day? Was it sports? Was it music? Like, what actually had your attention as a youngster?
Yeah. So I hockey all the time, road hockey. I played basketball. I had a really good friend, Todd Dan, who I grew up with, who played basketball. He's American, his dad was a border guard. And so he had this different background. We were really good friends, and he played basketball. So then I picked up basketball, but I loved hockey. And so through junior high school, basketball, hockey, volleyball. So I was full on sports 24/7, I think, would be my background.
Jets, like big Jets fan?
And then, I grew up obviously with hockey, with the Jets. And so my dad, he was sports director. He would televise junior hockey games. And so when he was in Brandon, he did that. And then when he became a teacher, that was what he did. He taught at Tech Voc, radio and broadcasting.
Okay.
And so our whole family has that sort of bent to it. My sister's a successful film producer in Thunder Bay, runs a film festival and has done, 100 films or whatever. But my dad taught it, and so part of he'd get the kids to televise the Winnipeg Warrior games.
Okay.
And so we, as my brother and me and my sisters and that, worked on those kind of games and stuff and got involved in it. And that's how my sister kind of went down that path. My brother did for a while. He worked at a news station. And then, I don't know when it was, 1982 or something, when video started to become a thing. Tom Watt phoned my dad actually and asked if he knew a student or somebody that could just come into the dressing room and tape the games. And so, of course, he gets my brother to do it. And so my brother goes in there and he works, I think he worked 2 seasons or a season and a half. And then he started a rock band and was starting to travel. And so I would spare for him.
Yep.
Just a young kid. I think I was 17 maybe at the time. And you'd walk into the Winnipeg Jets dressing room. And back then, like security and all those things were like
pretty loose
or whatever, right? And so I worked quite a few games that in 1986, 85, 86 season. And then the next year, when I went to, or I think it was grade 12. Yeah, I think it was grade 12. I just went to the dressing room on the September because I knew there was a job there. And my brother was like, I'm not doing it. And so I just drove down there, went and walked right in. I'll never forget Sudsy Sutherland was assistant coach, walking out of the shower buck naked. And I just there was no security. You walk down to right into the dressing room. I knew it was the first day of practice or whatever, tryouts. And I'm like, hey, I did the video last year. Can I keep doing it this year? And he's like, oh yeah, come in for the first exhibition game. We'll get you a pass. And what's your name again? And literally that was it. And then I wound up working there for 6 years through high school, last year high school. And then when I went to university, it was sort of my night job.
Yep.
And every year they fired the coach just about. And every year I got rehired. And every year my job got more responsibility. I would do scouting and advanced scouting so if we played Detroit, I'd watch Detroit the night before, play Chicago or whoever. Yep. I'd put a 3-page report together, a 10-minute video, and send it to the coaches, and they would prepare for the next game kind of thing.
So it was like you were all in on hockey.
Yeah, so I was like 250 games a year I'd watch during the year. Like it was crazy. And then going to university at the same time.
Who were the players back then?
So Dal Howardchuk and Thomas Steen and Teppo Numminen, and I got to know a lot of those guys. And so I did that all through university, paid my way through. I was making really good money because it's like almost it was kind of a full-time job.
Was it hard to balance the two, like university and that?
Yeah, and so that I wound up taking 5 years to finish my engineering degree because of it. But that was a great thing. And I realized it took me probably, I don't know, I was probably 3 or 4 years in as CEO at Crescent Point, fast forward a bit, where I realized how much I'd learned in that time period. Yeah. And just I sat in all the coaches' meetings.
No way.
I, sat directly in the coach's office in between periods, before and after games.
No way.
And went on the road with them for playoffs. And so you learn a lot, and seeing leadership and different leadership. And then the other benefit, I had multiple different coaches.
Right.
My last coach was Bob Murdoch. He just passed away here last year, 2 years ago. Amazing guy, and I learned so much from him. And he really gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of responsibility in the last couple of years while he was coach.
Did you know in the moment what you were learning? Like, because I'm, as a youngster, sitting in these rooms listening to true leaders, listening to them talk to like the best, the highest end athletes, and the thing. Did you understand like what you were digesting, or were you just like absorbing it?
Yeah, and I felt like such a kid, and yet I was like same age as some of the players. Like, and I still, even to this day, I'm like, wait a second, I was actually same age, or at some point I was older than a couple of the guys in there. But they're just men. Like I was like 145 pounds and young. But I'd have those conversations with Bob. Like he'd be like, "You're going to put this in a book someday. I think you're going to put this in." Like he would joke about stuff like that. And so I tried to absorb as much as I could and listen and listen and listen. And I think I probably had that skill I learned. Yeah. Just how to listen to people and some of the strategies they use to motivate players and things like that.
Because I guess as a youngster in that environment, you have to understand the hierarchy of what's in that room, right? Yeah. From GMs to coaches to players to captains to assistants, and to actually know where you fit in that hierarchy is just sit there and listen.
Yeah, and then I strangely was in this weird position because the players didn't treat me like the staff, like the other guys. I was kind of part of the coaching staff, and so there was some politics, and there was times where I remember Mo Mantha coming in and like, what the hell do I have to do to get on, get more ice, or like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, I can't say like what, and then I also disagreed with some of the stuff, and because there was politics. And then I remember being in the coach's office and the GM phoning down and telling the coach who he wanted on the lineup, and then Bob like losing his shit, and then looking at me, and I'm like, he's like, I'm done, right? And I'm like, he's like, you've been through this enough times, like I'm not going to be around. I'm like, it doesn't look good. Like when the coach, the GM. Rick Bonus was my first coach.
Wow. Classic names, hey? Like,
yeah. And what's funny about that is my wife, her best friend is his niece. Small world, like from Halifax. Sarah McGinnis, Smack, they call her. And so it's a really small circular world. So I graduated university. Just about before I was graduating, I had this choice again, like, do I stay? Because it was a great career, NHL.
Did you like passionate about it? Like was
I loved
hockey
it.
like
I loved and I still do. I mean, I still play. I love it. And so I had this moment in time where it was like, do I continue on? Because you're in the NHL, especially when you get to that level and you're in there, it is politics, and you can hang around with other coaches and work your way up, and I could have easily become a coach and done it.
Did you think about that?
Yeah, and Bob, I remember him looking at me like, don't even think, you're an engineer, go get your engineering, like get a job. Don't, this is brutal. Like, and it was literally, I carried his boxes out at the end of the season. And I was like, I need to move on. And I did it for 6 years. So you kind of, and it's nights. It's not a day job. Yeah. So it is a different world. Yep. Amazing world. But different. And so I had applied to this company called Sask Oil for a job, and I'd worked there in the summer before. I worked for Glen Urick, and they had told me, oh, well, we'll hire you when you graduate and make sure you apply. And so I had applied before Christmas and never heard anything. And I'd had a job interview with Thunder Bay Paper Mill. So our family is from Thunder Bay originally, my parents, and we had a cottage out there, and it was just like would have been a great place to go and work and be out the cottage. And I got down to the final interviews there, didn't get the job, thankfully, now when I think about it. And my mom was like, you got to get a job. Like, and it was 1991 or whatever. It's not like a recession, a pullback, not a lot of jobs. Most of my friends all went back to university. They graduated. And so my mom's like, you got to phone Glenn, like phone him and ask him where your resume is at. And so I'm like, young kid. I'm like, anyway, so I phone him and he's like, oh yeah, we cut a whole bunch of jobs, but let me get back to you. And 2 weeks later, he phoned me out of the blue and was like, hey, we got a job for you. And Neil Roselle, which you may or may not know who that is. He's another CEO in town.
Okay.
He's like, oh, I'm going to move Neil to a different group and you can take his job. And so my mom was like, on the looking at me while I'm on the phone, like you say yes, say yeah. And it was tough because it was like he had this NHL sort of career to work there, and it's pretty attractive. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take the job, and traveled through Europe. Did the travel through Europe for a couple months, and then started my job, and then moved to Regina, and worked at Sasko with Glen Urick in a group called Pasqua, and so it was like this small little company within a big company, and so it was like again like really a home run job. Like I got all the training of a big company, but then I got to work as a little company. So I did the budgeting, the engineering. Signed AFEs, did studies. Like I got to do pretty much everything. And this little company had properties all across Western Canada. So I got to know every basin, every type of play. And then on top of that, we did a whole bunch of deals. Things like we sold stuff to Penn West and CNRL when they were first starting in the early 90s to Murray Edwards. And so I got to see the whole business for 3 years. And then we packed it up to sell, and I did the whole sale process and all that. And I worked long hours. I was 16-hour days for 3 years. Like Saturdays, I used to joke that I always thought the my bosses were looking at that sign-in sheet and did Scott come in at 9 in the morning on Saturday or not. I had this real work sort of ethic of coming in early, staying late, coming in on Saturdays, Sundays, a lot of hours.
Because you loved it, or because there was that like.
Well, it was a bit of the pressure. There was a lot of competition, and I wanted to learn as much as I can. And I have this belief, and I tell this to a lot of people of you can't take knowledge from somebody. So the more you know, the more you work and learn and capture things, that is value, and long term it'll all pay off. And it may not pay off at the company you're at, but later on in life when you have that knowledge and you can apply it and use it, I think it's worth a lot. And I think in this world nowadays where there's this life balance and all that kind of stuff, that's great, but you also, when you're young, those years are the most important years to learn as much as you can and take it all in, do every type of job that you can, so that you can apply it later, and that it'll make your value proposition for yourself way more down the road.
Did you know that back then?
And I kind of believe that. I don't know if it was just more, I learned that from the people around me. I had some really good people around me. Gary Bunz, great mentor, Paul Colburn, Glenn Urick, Jim Pasica, that whole group. On that floor, there's like a half a dozen CEOs that came out of that company. So we had a really good group of people and friends, and it was a fun atmosphere, and you learned a lot. So I think that it was sort of, that kind of mindset. But
once you're kind of in that environment and it's just, you're learning everything, you're being exposed to a bunch of opportunities. Did you fully put to bed the NHL? Did you know that you were kind of in a spot where this was going to be your...
Yeah, I never ever really thought of, although I did when I was in Regina, I looked at working for the Regina Pats, like doing the same video coaching and that kind of thing. But it was just, I just didn't have the time and space for it. That was in my background for a few years on that kind of thought process. Then I got married young, 24, to Rachel. When we sold the company, I moved to Calgary, got a job with Newmac Energy.
Why the move?
Calgary's at the center of oil and gas. And I didn't really like the job I kind of got moved then to a different group. Because we sold the company, and then you're now back in the big company, and I was kind of like, I need to get to Calgary if I was going to do anything in the oil industry. And, so packed up, moved, and we moved to Newmac, and that was a great experience. Again, a lot of really good people there that I met over the years. And then some of my best friends, Todd Mazie, is a marketer, retired now, Kent Mitchell, who was at Wascana, followed me over, really good friends, and learned a lot from them. And then after a couple of years there, Glenn and Glenn, who were my bosses, and started up a new company called Magen, and they called me right away. So that was sort of the, all that work that I did, and maybe I didn't get recognized at that company. I got recognized, several years later, and joined them, and we built that company from 0 to 10,000 barrels a day. I was a main engineer, and they promoted me up through kind of the ranks. And then I had this moment in 1998 where I'd on paper was a millionaire on paper. Had a $100,000 loan from the company, $100,000 in options. Their stock had gone from $1 to $9, and I was like, okay, I got to sell some stock, and I'll pay off the house and be set. Just had a new baby, and I went to Glenn, and they were like, no, you can't sell right now. We're in the middle of doing something. I think it was 1997, sorry. And so I'm like, no, okay, I'm in it for the big bucks. I'm gonna, won't sell anything. And then all of a sudden, 1998 hit. Oil went from $20 to zero, or $10. It was brutal, and we almost went bankrupt. Stock went to below $1. I owed money to the company if we went bankrupt, bigger than my mortgage. And I remember, and then just had a new baby. And I remember getting up and putting the tie on and forget that I'm never going to do that ever again in my life. And really, that had a big impact on me for the future and how we ran our company and the things we did. And so everybody kind of needs to go through that experience. I'd never dream it on anybody, but you gotta go through something like that, I think, to really understand it.
It's hard though, right? You're smiling, you're in a good spot. But
it was not in a good spot.
Thing,
no.
It's really hard. Sleepless, everything's not.
Yeah, and what I remember of the time is just this gray February cold, those days, and you're just miserable. And it could have gone badly a lot of different directions. And we were fortunate enough to do an acquisition and get the company out of trouble, and then survive through to 2001 and sell the company. And then I was able to sell my stock and pay off my house, but then I put it all back into Crescent Point as a new startup, and which again 99.9% of people would never do.
Yeah.
After living through that and re-risk your whole life again.
Yeah.
But I was really confident, I think, in the asset that we were buying and the company and the people that we put together.
Yeah.
So partnered with Paul Colburn at that time and did this crazy deal with Rio Alto at the time. It was a $9 million deal. And then we borrowed the money from El Paso at the time, which was a venture fund. And it's a bit of a crazy story in that we is $9 million deal. We were going to put in $1 million. They're going to give us $8 million. And so I put in a $250,000, which is all I had basically. And I was sitting around the table, and Ian Dundas, who was one of the main guys we were talking to, and he's now in my office. We're on a couple boards together, and anyway, small world. Yeah. And he, I was like, well, what if El Paso goes under, and what if you guys want your money back? I'm gonna lose all my money, and I don't want to do that. And I'm like, how are we gonna, make sure that doesn't happen? He's like, well, we'll never go under. Like, that company is $50 billion company. Like, and I'm like, well, what if you lose your job or you quit? And then I'm dealing with some guy in Houston, and he's like, okay, we'll put in $1 million and we'll match you, and then we'll give you $7 million of debt, and it'll be $2 million. And so we're like, okay, so we do this deal. It's like June of 2001, and then September 11th happens. And oil craters again. We were supposed to take this asset with that money and roll it back into our public co and pay them back by Christmas and give them a 25% rate of return. So it's like
big numbers.
Loan sharking, right? Any way you look at it. And but we kind of battled through and IPO'd the day my second son was born, Kellen. And we're able to pay back the loan. They actually participated in some of the equity, and then that was sort of the birth of Crescent Point. And Crescent Point, by the way, the name comes from our cottage in Thunder Bay. Cool. All the names of my companies are kind of that. Anyway, fast forward by the next summer, and if people maybe forget about it, was Enron scandal happened right after 9/11, and then El Paso almost went under, and that whole group got disbanded. They all went over to Enerplus, and it was literally a year later. I'm at the Enerplus golf tournament with Ian, going, "Hey, where did you work before?" And we laugh at it to this day. It's a crazy story, and we wound up getting poker chips or whatever as the tombstone that they hand out typically on all these financings. Which is crazy when you think about all the different turns. And
did you always know that was going to be your next move? Was the idea of building your own business always there, and you were just
it was almost inbred in me at Wascana from all the other people I worked with. I think everybody had that same mindset and the entrepreneurial spirit of starting a company. Paul obviously was a big part of that. We had partnered to start Crescent Point. He was the leader, really. He was a senior guy. He'd already done startups, and we joined up, and and we had a really good team, and it was just that mindset, I think, from day one of just learning through osmosis of other guys around us, and I'll never forget going for. He had called me for lunch after about a year of working at Wascana, and I went for lunch with him. He's like, "Hey, I'm about to jump ship and leave and go to this new company called StarTech," and grilled me for all the different things that I would do different or thing. And so he had that sort of entrepreneurial thing, but he was trying to learn everything he could before he jumped into it. And so I think I learned a lot from that experience and watching others do it. Yep. And there were several other guys that left and started their own companies. Yep. So when you see all these people doing it, and I think, you take a step back in Calgary, and that's one of the things that frustrates, probably angers me the most about all of the things that have happened with the federal government and even the provincial government, changes in mandates and different things that have happened, really destroyed that entrepreneurial spirit in on the oil patch side.
Yeah.
This last couple years has been the first time in a long time where there's been multiple startups. I think there's something like 20 or 25 new startups, which is unheard of, I think, in the last 10, 15 years. But that whole changeover from the trust taxation, which Mark Carney was the big part of, destroyed Calgary oil patch, like in one stroke of the pen. So, I think people maybe forget how detrimental that was to Calgary. I would say that was probably the single worst event that I've lived through in my career. And we're still battling through that. There's just no feeder system where you raise equity in a small startup and then roll it into a new into a larger company, and that cycle. And so it's sort of sad when you think about it, that whole entrepreneurial spirit of Calgary. It's been definitely hollowed.
I'm not in the energy industry, but I'm born and raised Calgarian, right? So there's a lot of people in my life that I've witnessed, right? The ups and the downs. And did you just, when you decide to start your business, are you just okay with that? Do you understand that's the reality of it, but you have your own ideas how you can mitigate the risk? Like, how do you? I
think it's been 30 years until I've realized that it's probably took me 20 years to realize. I think we have to be almost dumb to it, I think, probably, to keep on doing it. But I think you have to have that belief in the growth in the world and that there's another idea coming and something new coming. And it's every time I think, I think there's nothing left, and then sure enough, there's something out there. And so same with on the tech side, you'd think, everything's been developed. Well, no, it's not even close. And so I think having that sort of spirit and vision to see that there's, and taking the risks. A lot of times it's just that willingness to take that first step is the toughest.
There's just so many people who've tried it, right? That have taken a step, and that step just didn't work. And is that that's just, I don't want to say luck, but it's just that situation wasn't supposed to happen at that time?
Yeah, obviously there's multiple different reasons why businesses fail or succeed. And I'm a mentor, so I mentor at NYU Stern Business School, chief mentor there. And then I mentor at Creative Destructive in Calgary in the Rockies. And I meet a lot of these companies, and you have to, have a plan, have a good idea. It's really good to surround yourself with good people, good mentors, people that you can rely on that can give you real advice. And there are people that have done it, and listening to them is probably the most powerful. Because they've lived through it. There's a lot of people that maybe think they know, or they kind of read enough, but it's not. You have to kind of live some of these things. And that's the whole purpose of this program is to hold their hands and kind of guide them to things that are missing. And some of them are very, very subtle. So you could think that you're making a great move and it's all logical, but then there's something that's missing that's could be a massive error, or could be just a small thing that builds. And so I call them landmines. You can step on a landmine in that, and that's what it is. You have to take calculated risks and do things that are that have limited downside and more upside. And so there's a lot of these strategies that we kind of explain to people to follow, and just simple things of meeting, communication, that people don't realize that they need to do, and realization that the CEO actually does a lot. And there's probably a fallacy out there that the CEOs just roll in and
Corner
tell people what
office,
to
feet
do.
up.
And it's like, if I don't get out of bed as CEO, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally that tight. And so the realization of that, you can hire people and you can push things off to certain people, but they all have to still be guided, and you have to have a vision, and you have to push things forward and manage it and be involved and understand decisions that are made and all kinds of different things to shepherd everything along. And it's a lot of work.
Yep.
And so I think that's something that maybe is very misunderstood by general population.
Yep.
But I think every CEO would understand it, but or a lot of CEOs some don't, the new ones. And so those are things that you get, that the realization kicks in. But.
You touched on mentorship. Did you have mentors when you were kind of figuring this all out, like in your early days of?
Yeah, and that's what, like Glenn Urick, Glenn Carley, Paul Coburn, Peter Bannister, Gary Bunz, my friend group, Todd Mazie, Kent Mitchell, Neil Roselle, a lot of really good friendships. Ken Cugnut was a great board member. Greg Turnbull. I was very fortunate with our board.
On purpose, though? Were you mindful of how?
I was not, and so it comes to different stories.
Sounds great.
future mistakes that I made. Our first board group, was put together by Paul, by and large, and they were very good mentors and people, and understood the business, and I think that was a big part of our success.
Yep. Did you have the ideas, and did you have the vision in your head? But then these people they were agreeing with it, or they were just
encouraging. They obviously asked the hard questions when they needed to be. Sometimes that's good mentoring, is just letting people run with things, right? And not getting in their way, not trying to coach too much. And, good coaches, that's, again, like I learned a lot of different things from when our guys are tired. Oh, maybe I'll play a different player. And, there's all these sort of things that make for that.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a good part of our success, is letting that happen.
Mm-hmm. The NHL thing is fascinating to me. Did you know, like when you got in that position, you started the company?
Yeah.
Did those locker rooms and the coaches all start making sense of like you could remember what they said and how they managed to, if the team was in a tailspin for 5 games, could you remember the energy, remember the tone, and to your point, not overcoaching and not.
Yeah, like I think there was multiple sort of facets of the learning to manage my time.
Yeah.
Like all these side things learning to listen and pay attention to people, came from sitting around the table with my parents and talking, came from listening, like coaches, and listening to what they their approach to things.
Yeah.
And I know I used a lot of that stuff probably through osmosis, like just, naturally, because it came from it coming to me. And then it wasn't until later on that I really realized, taking a step back, at how much I had learned.
Yeah.
And like when I came out of university and graduated, I had 6 years experience really in
for sure
communication and different soft skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think really helped me within the organizations and the work that I did.
Yeah.
So I think I learned to appreciate all that more, and then learned to appreciate the advice and different conversations. And I wasn't perfect all the way through, definitely, but we had really good culture, I think, that we built, and I was focused on culture in the company through that. I think through what I learned at Wascana combined with the hockey.
Yeah.
And how important culture is. The teams that were failures the one year and the teams that were successful the other year, and knew why that was.
Could you?
And you could see it, because it was. I saw it from the same coach. 1 year it was amazing. You walk in the dressing room, you could feel it in the air. The next year, you walk in the dressing room, you could feel it in the air. It was just miserable. And I think a lot of that carried with me through running a company. And I also used to say, like, we're a family. This is our company to build. We don't need to listen to other people's views of how to build things.
Yep.
And it was for us to listen and for the group underneath me to tell me, hey, this is how we want to run and things that we want to do. And so we had a lot of unique things. We had the bistro, and people, outside people kind of, oh, that's hoity-toity, like country club. And I was like, it's made us so much money and it helped us so much. Like I'd go down for the morning breakfast. We'd lay out this amazing sort of, and it came from, what's the hotel just down the street here on French Hotel. Anyway, they had this buffet breakfast and we kind of copied that style. And I'd go down there. I'd have 15 meetings in 15 minutes.
Yeah, amazing.
And I'd meet every part of the company and have those conversations. Sometimes I'd grab my food, go back up to my office, just like a majority of people did, and they just keep working. Or you'd sit and chatter for a bit, and then go back to your office. And so we learned so much and learned things I would never learn in a meeting.
Yeah.
So that paid for itself right there. Yeah. We used to have a lot of people would leave, go to Tim Hortons or go to Starbucks, and that stopped. So all this time where people would walk for an hour, come back and then work, we reduced that amount of downtime. And then some people would take double portions. So like, oh, hey, they're taking advantage of it. And I'd be like, cha-ching, because they would then work through lunch. Yeah. And so you just got more out of people. They're healthier, ate way better food. We had the gym, and I learned this at Wascana. And Paul Coburn, I mean, that's how I really got to know him, is he's, or the other vice presidents or other engineering managers, they'd be working out, doing weights, and you would work out with them or shower with them or whatever, and you'd learn what they're talking about. Yeah. And so you got to know what's going on in the company. You got to know the executives. So when you went into a meeting, you weren't fearful of them. And so it was, again, a whole nother set of meetings. And so we had the gym. And so that was the same thing, all these classes and things for people to connect across the company. And then it just took down barriers with everybody, and they got to learn and get to know people. And I think it was probably 10 years into the company, we'd given raises, we'd done the bistro, we'd done, like, do everything. And we're like, I was sitting around with Trent Stengel, a really good friend of mine. He's vice president of marketing and IR and stuff. And we were like, what do we give? Yeah. What's the number one thing you think? And it's friendship. So the number one thing in a company for compensation is friendship. If you can have and go to work with all your friends, what a great atmosphere. Yeah. Like, and because that's how I'd met Trent, Kent, Todd, all my buddies through work. And it was funny because we did things like, and this is what prevailed in some of the fun events, golf event, bowling, hiking, just going on a simple hike. Yeah. And we had, early on, and our company was 60% women, 40% men. So we had a different mix. Yep. And a lot of the women were younger and then started having babies, and had some of the women come and say, hey, can we have a baby shower? And I'd be like, for sure. And yeah, you could do it in the bistro, and maybe have it start at 3 so that you can go later, just in case it goes longer. And it was purposeful in that if a whole bunch of women were going to go to another woman's baby shower, they were friends. Yeah. And it created these tight friendships. And that was just sort of one example of the multiple kind of things that we did. Yeah. Education and having professors come in to teach a class to help people get to their MBA or their all those kind of things built long-standing friendships. And so that's what we really focused on as that added compensation that I think created an amazing culture. And that was really important to me as much as it was the success of the overall company, but it related to the success of the overall company. And I used to joke, I had the saying of less happy people. So it was like less people, but they're all happy, and we kept a really tight G&A budget and group.
Was that a unique environment for someone, for the leadership team to actually do this, like to invest that heavily in culture? And actually,
I think so. I don't think there in the city for sure. There's no other company that had that culture
and you just trusted it. Like you just felt like that was the.
Well, and this is one thing, pet peeves of me with HR is that HR and legal kind of treat people like they're 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
When they're all adults, and they can, and it's all based on one case out of a million that happened, and so we have to protect against that. And it's just not the way to run a company.
Yeah.
You have to believe in your people, trust that they're going to make right decisions. Everybody goes through things in their lives, through their whole life. I went through a divorce. It was very difficult. People go through things and maybe have periods of time where they're not doing that great.
Yeah.
And you as a leader and as a manager or as a coworker have to support people through those kind of things, and they could become great people again. And everybody through that I worked with through the 18 years in our company, people went through things and had periods of time where they maybe weren't as productive as they maybe were a year earlier, and then became better. And that's it's called life, And we as a society sometimes in these companies don't respect that there's a life that people live and understand that those kind of things can happen, and are there to support them, and they can still function and be good employees. They're just sometimes they're not perfect employees, and so. You have to kind of have that. And I had this view, you hear about it a lot. So you had a party, somebody got into trouble and got drunk or whatever, and so they got fired. And you're like, I used to look at that as like such a missed opportunity, because we had some incidents. They were never bad. They were kind of like those drunk sort of incidents. Yeah. And we would meet with them and, hey, like, what are you doing? You can't do that at get so drunk at a thing. And they would become the most loyal employees because they knew they could have easily got fired for that. Yeah. Now, the serious stuff, like we instantly fired. Like there wasn't even a blink of an eye of if it was sexual harassment or some, and we only had a very minimal of those, one or two I can think of. And those were instantaneous that I even thought about. But these are kind of, stuff that happens as an adult. Like, I mean, you're like, they're adults. And so, I felt that treating people with respect and giving them the opportunity to prove otherwise. And they became so loyal and some of our best people. Yeah. And so I looked at that and kind of was like, that's a learning lesson. Because it also helps everybody else around you that they know if you make a mistake, that they're not going to get, taken out to the firing squad, And that also then takes a culture that then becomes more open and people can have arguments and disagree and then talk it through and make the right decisions.
You said something earlier that the 15 meetings in 15 minutes when you're at the bistro, you're just like talking to people going by, Did you realize what you were doing? Like touching,
100%.
Like touching, like you, there'd be a day, okay, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to stay down there, I'm going to eat there, and I'm just going to have these touch points.
Oh yeah, for sure. I purposefully talk to people and like I had the advantage of being a founder CEO and being there from day one. I got to know everybody all the way through every hire. I interviewed
all the way through, like even as the thing scaled, like you still.
Well, I think once we got over 100, I think I stopped. I stopped interviewing, unless they're like key or whatever. But we had golf tournaments. I remember doing a golf tournament. I sat at a hole, and CEO gets to hit a ball, on the par 3, and you can use my ball or something, And we had 300 staff, I think, at that time, or 200, and I knew 300 staff. Like I'm terrible with names, and I knew just about every single person that came to that tee box and could ask them something about their family or something about, and so it amazed me actually for my own self. Yeah. Because and there's odd time I'm like, what's her name again or his name? And that part of it is being in the bistro, going down, seeing people, and you have different and then all these different experiences. So you golfing with people, or the bowling, or hiking, you gain all these experiences with people around you, and then you get real legitimate conversations. And I used to do stuff in the meetings that were goofy story. Like I like to make people think differently and call people out to see how they would react. And I remember we were in a meeting, and my COO, Neil Smith, great guy, and there was this Tara Humphreys. Taryn
Humphreys.
Sorry. She's
Seriously?
gonna laugh again. Anyway,
Taryn?
Taryn Humphreys. Do you know her?
My cousin.
Okay, your cousin. Yeah. So here's your cousin.
I was like,
okay. So I just saw her at. We were just in Kananaskis. I was in the hot tub with her, and I was laughing about the story she's presenting, and I'm quizzing her on stuff, and I'm like, oh, you really think that's, and Neil's like, oh, Tara. Yeah, tell us, maybe tell us with this. And I look at him like, her name's Taryn, like, and so she kind of looks at me, and I'm like, and so she continues the story, and I'm like, okay, Taryn, and I'm like, and Neil looks at me, I'm like, Taryn, and then she finishes her presentation. I'm like, okay, but don't you think that's kind of boring? Like, not, and I'm like, what would Tara do? And she's like, well, Tara, and then he flips her hair back. Well, Tara would drill 5 more wells out here, and I must have called her Tara every time after that, in every meeting of, okay, now tell me what Tara would do, for probably 2 years or whatever. And so things like that to kind of get people, out of their shell and to tell you the real story of kind of what's happened. I never even thought about that. She's related to you.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Eh?
That's funny.
Of all the stories.
I'm still on this. I just find it fascinating that the culture piece was that top of mind. And was that just a natural move for you to go there?
I think like it's part of being ownership. Like you own the company, like you're part of the company. The company's you want the company to be successful. You want, shareholders to be happy, obviously.
Yeah.
You want to have everybody around you be successful. I learned a lot of these little things. Like in the oil patch, it's like, oh, I came from Amoco, or I came from here, or I came from there. Well, I really wanted, hey, I came from Crescent Point.
Yeah.
And I wanted people to go, oh, they're really well trained, smart, really good. I never expected people to be there forever.
Yeah.
Wanted them to march on to do other things and run companies and show that, hey, we had a really strong company. And that was a real key to me as another mark of being a successful company. And because it's not just about the share price, but obviously shareholders, that is. But when you're working there, that it has to be more than that.
The journey from is 18 years?
18, yeah.
Is it a blink?
Yeah, it seems hard to believe. I mean, it's,
like a lot happened over 18 years.
Oh, yeah. High stress. I probably had a page full of things that I could identify in my body of stress stuff. It was difficult on the family, kids, you name it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, CEOs typically average. I mean, if the average is 7 to 8 years, there's a lot that last as long as I did, and there's a lot that last, or maybe not as many as last that I did. There's a lot that only lasts 4 or 5 years, because it is a high stress job, and day in, day out, and so it takes a toll on you. And I was young. I was unique, and I was 34 when I was a CEO. And we'd go marketing and be like, how old are you? Because I looked really young as a 34-year-old. I looked like I was 24. And I'd get asked every single meeting. So you can imagine you're going in, you're trying to raise money, and like a real meeting, like Fidelity, money manager is going to put $100 million in your company. It's like, first question, how old are you?
Seriously?
Yeah. It's like, and then the banker that you're walking around with you is like, okay, enough. Like, so So that's a lot of pressure, I think, to succeed. And we went through a lot of different downturns, upturns, rule changes. Like I said, like the Halloween massacre of 2006, I guess it would have been, with the trust taxation, and was massive change of Calgary. Like hurt every Calgary company. And that's, and it took quite a few years to kind of really show up, but it's definitely still there, overhang. And then royalty trust taxation changes and government changes. And
all big. As you're kind of managing the stress, ups and downs, did you have anything that was like your backstop? Was there anything, was it like, I don't know, meditation, books, fitness? Was there anything that was kind of like that you had with you that was helping you manage those ups and downs?
Yeah, I tried. I coached my kids hockey.
Oh, you do?
I read, I worked out. You try to do lots of different things. But it's just a slow continuum, right? It's not typically any big one event. And so it's slowly, in my case anyway, it slowly sort of built up it's you definitely have to manage it and surround yourself with the right people, which I don't, I would probably argue I didn't surround myself maybe with the best people at the time. And you battle that, I think, as a CEO, building a business. But, I mean, it wasn't awful. I mean, the end of the world, but
Yeah, but it's still...
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. It's a unique situation.
Yeah.
Your transition out, author, entrepreneur, that, and the interesting thing, I've had some conversations with athletes, pro hockey players, pro football players, Olympians, and the out. Is an interesting conversation because sometimes people get to go out on their own terms. Sometimes they don't, whether it's injuries, whether it's new coaches, contracts, whatever. They can't, they might have their own idea of how retirement looks. For you, like the transition.
I had two transitions. So one was, it's funny that you raise it. So when I left the Jets and started my career, it was weird. It took me, I could go to a hockey game. I couldn't watch a hockey game. Because when I watched a hockey game, I was analyzing every player. I knew every player's number. I knew the helmet that I could pick what player was what in the whole NHL, because you watch every game. Like, it's so crazy. And back then it wasn't all the computerized and stuff. It was like handwritten manual stuff, and you had to pay attention. And I had that. And so I actually did have a bit of a withdrawal, and it's a little bit ego-y, like you're
the best league in the world.
Yeah, you're part. And so you had this sort of, hey, I'm being part of a team, and then not anymore. And so that was a little rough to go through and move away and all that. And then when I left Crescent Point, we had a plan. Like, I had resigned in early May. It was a whole year of me back and forth of wanting to quit. I had literally quit the year before. The board was like, no, like, stay on, we'll battle through it. And we sort of did things and then we had my first of my second set of kids in April. And just before that, I was just struggling with not wanting to continue. 18 years, a long time. And we had a really good group of people below. And we'd been the longest standing management team. And it was just time. It just felt like the time. And we had set the company up in a great position, low debt, had a really strong growth plan. We had just acquired 600 sections in the Duvernay and like really well positioned. And then we kind of got attacked. And then we got attacked by a good friend of mine. And I was just kind of, I had already decided the year before, like, if if we had issues around our AGM again, I was going to step down. And so I went to the board at the beginning of May and said, hey, I'm stepping down, like after we kind of won the vote, and it was a bit of a mess. And then we immediately went to succession plan. We had Craig and Ryan in our succession plan. I worked with them in the group, and we were building this plan that I would, hold his hand and help the company. And the board had a different view. A portion of the board had a different view, and they were like, no, clean break, no helping. And I didn't. I mean, ideally, that's great for me, but for Craig and the group, I think it was real tough and a lot tougher for them. And because he was a junior VP and didn't know what the senior VPs did even. So it was a very difficult transition for them. And when you reflect back, and today actually they just sold to Whitecap, just announced.
Oh, wow.
So the whole company just sold today. So it's interesting.
Mm.
And so for me, I went from thinking, okay, I'm going to have 3 months, 4 months where I'm going to transition and help, and was fully happy to do that, to all of a sudden, okay, I'm done. And it was my 50th birthday.
Jesus.
It was interesting because I took over on my 34th birthday as CEO, literally on my birthday.
Wow.
We announced it, and I left on my birthday. It's like crazy.
Crazy.
And I went off to LA with all my buddies and had a big party, a 50th birthday party, and it was great. My wife had organized it, and it was amazing. And came back, and the transition for me, I think, was fairly easy. I was I started up a new company right away. Started looking for deals. I already had a small private company. And then I had started writing a few months before that. And that was also part of it was one of these life things that I wanted to do. I had started writing. I was really enjoying it. And it really inspired me to kind of, hey, this is time. Like you're 50 years old. Like, when are you going to start doing this? And so that was another factor, new baby, this writing. And so it really kind of was, okay, I could really see the next step, and having my own little private company, and had some good ideas around that. And so it just was natural for me. So I don't think there was any kind of trauma involved in that side. The trauma for me was just watching the group struggle that I left, and that they were really close friends of mine, and so that's probably been probably was the biggest struggle. And then writing, not easy.
No.
It takes a long time.
And were you willing to figure it out though? Like you were?
Yeah, I wrote and wrote and wrote, and finally got to this first manuscript, and gave it to my parents, and gave it to my wife, and gave it to the kids. And thank God none of them, they were all very gracious. Let's put it that way.
But nerve-wracking to do that?
Oh yeah, it's hugely. It's like giving your diary to somebody or whatever, right? And so many spelling mistakes and so many, anyway, awful compared to what I can do now. But and then I gave it to a few editors to give me their feedback and advice. And again, so gracious, the whole writing community is that way. It's like an interesting dynamic difference than the world I came from. And then multiple drafts. And there were so many times you could quit, or so many times I could go, oh, I'll let somebody else do it. And never. I was like, never, I'll let that happen. I wanted to really get through it. And the purpose was I wanted to write more than just one book.
Right.
Some people, I just want to write a book and show that I can do it, and that's one task. But I wanted, this was going to be a career, and it's a career. I want to write 10 or 15 novels, and I'm working on my 4th right now. So this isn't something that I'm doing as a one-off. And so that was the purpose of grinding through. And when you listen to other writers talk and their process and how they got to where they got to, and it's that long journey. It's a 5-year journey, I think, at least. Some take 8 years, some less. And so I'm glad I went through that journey and battled through it. And every book is another journey. And it's like a startup oil and gas company. And there's a risk around it. And is it any good? And, you know, like, so that's also exciting. It's kind of, I've had that experience. So I enjoy that side of it now. I'm still nervous about talking about writing and promoting my book and all those kind of things. So I'm learning to be better at that.
Just because it's new? Like it's like a new experience for you?
I don't know what it is. It's almost it's like because you're putting yourself out there like so much, right? And for criticism and is that any good? And you know, I'm really confident in this book, and I've had so many people look at it and so many people opine on it, and I've got really good reviews, and I've had lots of my friends have read it now. Like now it's getting more traction, and so I think as the months have gone on from the release, I'm more confident about my writing, and so that's I think really helpful, and so you learn like every day I'm learning something, and I'm trying to learn on something every new in writing and how to be better, and you got to read a lot, and get lots of feedback and rewrite, and so that's been fun. So
and tricky too, like the feedback loop. Like I'm sure.
You
can get to a point like I think this is it.
Jenna was like, "You're not listening to me." I'm like, "Yes, I am. I'm trying to listen to you." It's hard. You know, and I try. Like I literally take everybody's advice and rewrite and try to do like especially things that are multiple, like 3 people tell me the same thing, you fix it, right? And I pine over it, and then at some point you kind of have to let it go, and you're like, okay, this is as good as it's going to be, because you can always, I could tinker on it forever, and so that's kind of the interesting process and learning process. And now I'm down to like my second book took a year to write. My third book took a little bit more than a year, and then I'm just starting my fourth, and it's moving along at a good pace. But it's still a struggle and a battle, and you can, all my stuff I've got up on my website, so people want to read the different books. Yeah, it's definitely there, and it's selling well now.
It's learning. Pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, like today I was 15th on the Amazon.
No way.
Historical
no joke,
fiction.
Right?
Yeah. Along with like almost top 10, because there's like 4 books that are duplicates of the same book. But so it's
Amazing.
So and that's 4 months later or whatever. So so I think it's building traction and getting the word out on the book is sort of a key thing, I think, for people to see it and I'm focused on this next one, and
it just keeps moving forward.
And I just did a new oil and gas startup. So it's like Sharptail Energy. We raised $30 million over Christmas, did an acquisition, and got another team, former guys that I worked with, and group that I worked with, and so that's super fun.
The spot you're in right now, you know, you kind of got your hands in multiple things. Does it feel like you energized with all these things on the go, and it just feels like a good balance right now versus kind of all in at Crescent Point? I love the optionality I have and I can plan my own schedule. I do a lot of mentoring. It's tough because you're giving up a whole bunch of these hours, but I learn so much through it, meet so many great people. We invest alongside in these companies, so it's exciting to kind of watch them grow. So I really enjoy that, but it is a lot of work. And then the 2 companies that I have are work. You know, they're not. They're well run and small, so it's easy to kind of to manage. And then it's just fitting in the writing time is kind of probably my biggest angst. And so I'm pretty disciplined every day trying to write and do something.
And so that's where I'm in this sort of, and we have young kids, another new little baby, Winter, a week ago. And so, that's busy. So I'm having to kind of managing the different balance between the different things. But a good place to be relative to public company, big company. Your schedule's set for you a lot of ways. And
to find the time to be creative, the writing time, do you put structure around that? Because I find I'm a creative person. I don't really have, I don't have all the responsibility of you, so I can kind of, my days are a little different. Yeah. But actually, to schedule a time to be creative, I feel like it's kind of like two different things, like structure and creativity. Yeah. Does it work for you? Are you able to
So I don't structure anything. I've learned, and I think this is the muscle you have to learn, is that I just had a 2-hour meeting, and then I go to my office, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to start writing. Or I didn't get anything done that day, and so it's at night, and I actually write on my phone more than I probably should or whatever, but I'll go to the notepad and I'll sit in the hot tub, or I'll sit on listen to music, and I'll try to write something. And those words kind of add up. So if you can write even 100 words, a couple hundred words every day, they add up over time. And then you have to kind of sit down and drill through it. But I try to do that every single day, and I try not to take any days off. Obviously, there's days that just you can't, but I try to do something. So that's sort of the. I've learned, kids running around, block them out, writing, and I think that's because if I tried to go, okay, I'm going to write from 9 till 11. And as soon as you sit down and be like, I can't do it. And there's days where I'm like, I might get 50 words. Okay, I think I'm going to write 50 words. And then I write 2,000. And then there's times I'm like, okay, I'm ready to write 2,000 words, and I write 50. You just don't know when those days are going to be. And so I like to, when I go on trips, I try to do as much writing, flying. I'll write the whole flight if I can. Things like that where you're kind of restricted in things you can do. So I all those kind of add up over time. And I think that's really the way for me to manage it. Someday I'll take less things, and then I'll have the whole day to write, and I probably won't write anything.
You'll just be staring at it and be like, no what?
It'll be like, oh my God, how can I? So and everybody's process is different, so you can't describe it. But I think learning to, not block out distractions and write. And with the babies, I'm putting them to bed or lying there, I'll think about my book and what I can write, and then write something. So there is actually more downtime sometimes with the little ones anyway. Forced. And they're great times.
Babies, kids, multiple jobs, writing, different stresses, and. The reason, why can you do that? Why can you give your energy to all these things and actually push everything forward?
Yeah, I think I work 24/7 is how you look. I work Saturday, Sundays, evenings, and with the kids. I mean, we take our time with the kids. You're 5 o'clock till 8:30 or whatever, and playing, and then try to do something maybe in the evening, or watch a show, or read, or and do a bit of writing. I don't find it that stressful. The day. I can manage my day, so that's a big key, I think. I get up with the kids and get them ready for school, and then go into work for 9, and so it's not the same stress as a big corporate job. So maybe me coming from
you're
running,
I got this.
It's like nothing. So maybe that's part of it. I mean. And enjoying a lot of the stuff that you're doing. It's and I have really good people around me, friends that I work with, and I work with my older son, Graham. It's great to work with him, and the group that I have, Tamara and Carolee and Ayaz and Lisa, and it's really good. Group.
Works.
And then the other company, Jamie and Dave and Amanda, they're fun. So our floors, it's good to be
There's
around.
energy.
And it's we're not high paced, like it's, so you have this time. I think I would go crazy if I wasn't writing, because I'd be waiting for the next drill and waiting for the next, because it's long times, lead times.
Yeah.
One of our wells, it takes like 30, 40 days to drill. So if I can write, 10,000 words over that time period, it's
productive.
So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Whereas in a big company, your projects, your quarters, your press releases, your marketing, your, like there's so many things to deal with.
Yeah.
You just don't have time in the day. So different experiences. For sure.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool I've heard Crescent Point for a lot of years. I've known Dan and Leah for a long time.
Yeah.
And so just to actually, put it all together for me, it's cool to hear it.
Yeah, it was great. Leah's like, I think the only person we hired out of companies we took over or something. She has a record for.
I end the show with one question.
Okay.
When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
When you say Calgary? Oh, God. That's a good question. I don't know. Family, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's the core of our family is Calgary. Great city. I think we're very fortunate for the city we live in. But I think family is probably the first thing that I think of.
Yep.
And roots and friendships. And there's I think it's pretty central to the core of our family anyway.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time.
Great.
Really cool.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and happy to be on any other time.
Yeah, it's
good therapy.
Well, it's cool. It's cool because it's if they hear the hockey background that you had, I'm like, fuck, that's awesome.
Well, I didn't even talk about owning the team, Arizona Coyotes.
I love they just slide at it. But and that's why before we got on camera and I said I don't do any research and I don't like to do a Wikipedia interview.
Yeah.
And I just listen to what's on your mind. So it's cool to just hear this version of the story. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks.